Yeah. So what would be the greatest way that I could experience this unlimitedness that I pray about every day?
Yeah, just enjoy it, my dear friend. You see, you can't put it in a bottle, and you can't give it a name. Ultimately, part of the plan as you grow into greater and greater love is as you are on a quest for love, suddenly you become that, and no longer are you seeking it, but you're just the full expression of it.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me today.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I came across your Instagram a few years back, and I always appreciated your vibe because I could really tell that you were a really nice person. You had a lot of self-awareness, and I've been learning about astrology, and I was kind of into that. So I noticed on one of your posts you were like, Taurus Sun, Gemini rising. Which is polarized by my Sagittarius rising. And then you have a water moon in Scorpio, and I have a Pisces moon. And so I was like, like water moon people tend to be my people, right? Because we're feelers. We operate on a much more like sensitive and compassionate space. I mean, obviously there's, there's all types of people in the world. And, but what I find is, the people that are just inherently kind people, those tend to be my people. You know what I mean?
1000%. I feel you and I agree with you. I feel like I definitely gravitate towards the same. And it's funny you mentioned that, like kind of just finding people in the world who are kind of your people, because that's really, really important to me, is kind of find that here, especially in the content space. You come across a lot of people who are just not as genuine as maybe they appear to be online. So to me, it's one of those things where the more I can't pretend to be something like I'm not going to go out and pretend to be overly anything to please anybody around me. Like I want to find the people who, like you said, like you can tell they're your people. So I also have been on this journey of throughout just life and chaos and things that happen every single day, finding people who are more in alignment with me, and also like in different words than what you said, move with love, move with gratitude, move with kindness, because I feel like that's what the world needs more of for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when we learn about who we are, and as we like go on that journey of like self-discovery and like learning what feels safe, what feels good, what feels appropriate, and we learn how to like be more discerning in life, we definitely want to surround ourselves with like-minded and hearted people because it's in alignment, like you said, with our vibe. And, when you work so hard to be authentic and honest, because it's about really authenticity is just about being self-honest. Like when nobody's looking, when you're at home, when you're looking in the mirror, when you're having conversations with yourself, if you make a commitment to being like self-honest, then it's easy to be able to go out in the world and recognize when people are operating more in their persona versus actually being true to themselves. Right.
Right.
And, So, having you on the show and taking a look at your astrology chart, the other thing that I noticed was, and again, I'm just a student of astrology, and I know that it's part of my path to like help bring a practical brand of spirituality to the masses. So if we have like professional astrologers who listen to the show, like wonderful, like, hey, I'm not interested in being a professional astrologer, but I'm curious, right? I'm a learner. And so, and I've always been that way. I've always like studied the structures and the patterns of like physical reality, spiritual reality, relationships. And so I'm always like curious about like grabbing all of these little parts and pieces to help us explain, because like life is super juicy. Life is beautiful. Like we're literally like standing on the side of a ball that's floating in fucking space that's infinite in size. Like dude, like what the fuck's going on, right? This is already wild as shit.
You're so right.
Yeah. So anyway, the moon nodes supposedly are like your south node is your past life energy, and your north node is the polarized opposite astrological sign that represents like what you're learning in this life. And so when I pulled up your chart, I saw that we had the same south node of Pisces, and it's almost at like the same degree of like 26 or 27. Now each sign only has 30 degrees, so as you move closer to the end of that degree, it's kind of more of a mastery. So inherently, if you and I are like right there at that same degree point, it's like we have a certain understanding for this Pisces energy. So we inherently are naturally creative, intuitive, compassionate, open, vulnerable. It's just a natural thing for us. We've already developed that in our past life.
Right.
So what we have going on in this life is we have to learn Virgo, which is more about grounding that energy. Virgo is like the maiden, is the one who's focused more in house 6 of like workplace and like being of service and stuff like that. So like, but the interesting thing is we have it in an opposite place, meaning your Pisces is actually in the 10th house. And so you have it like right in the middle point of your 10th house. So your 10th house is like career. It's like the way the world sees you. It's like that Capricorn kind of place. It's like when I'm in the world, so for you in your past life, you're very good about being in the public. It's like, it's more natural for you. Like you don't really stress on it. Like, and so what you're actually focused on in this life is in the 4th house in Virgo. So even though you're really good at being in the public eye, you're really more focused on that inner sanctuary of that domestic home life and like really learning how to like, nurture that space. And so that's kind of more of a focal point.
Right.
And I have the opposite. I'm like Pisces in the end of the 3rd house, like right at the end and right into the 4th house. So it's like I'm naturally a great communicator and like even into that kind of that domestic area. Whereas my Virgo is at the end of the 9th house going into the 10th house. So it's like I'm here to be like a teacher in the 9th house, and kind of I have a lot of planets in the 10th house like Mars, Venus, and Pluto. So like transformation, relationships. So for me, like I'm learning how to push myself out into the world and learning how to be seen, whereas you are naturally good at being seen, and there's a little bit more of a focus of that personal side. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I feel that so much because I feel like even nowadays, I've been trying to be more comfortable with like speaking and everything publicly and all of that. And it's something that I think I told myself I wasn't good at. And then I started doing it, and every single person who I'll work with them or I'll do something for them, they're like, you need to be speaking more. Like it comes so naturally to you. But I guess I've always been camera shy in a way. But when it comes to me actually talking, it's so natural. So that's something that I'm learning now, probably the past year, that it's something that, like, for example, I also do marketing, and a lot of people have me create ads for them because it's just so easy for me to get on and jump and talk. And whereas I feel like that's all great, but also I feel like same thing I was mentioning at the beginning of our I guess of the call is that I feel like throughout this journey that I've been on, especially in the content space, I've been trying to just, especially the vulnerability thing, bring it in with me, because I feel like it's so easy to be seen and it's so easy to put yourself out there these days with social media and living in a digital world, that it's like people don't really see like you and what makes you you. And a lot of times we only highlight the really great things about us, but we don't talk about the things that, make us upset, make us angry, make us feel vulnerable. So I feel like I've been trying to bring a lot of that part of what makes me me into the public, I guess, the digital world, the digital side of me.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I have like a notation here about really being like a hyper empathic, and I always like find myself being touched by things emotionally, like in life or watching TV, different things like that, because we naturally are emotional and empathic people, and we have these water moons and everything like that. But the strange thing is, in a lot of ways, because the majority of people are so busy selling the persona, selling the hype, selling the drama. It's like there's a certain taboo to being like really authentic. You know what I mean?
1000%. I feel you, because I think that a lot of times what gets the most attention is the drama, is the chaos. Because I just watched a documentary yesterday, and it was saying how the whole concept of any publicity is good publicity, bad or good. Because, you know, at the end of the day, people like watching things that trigger an emotion out of them, whether it's happiness, anger, sadness, whatever it is that triggers that, where the power of doing something that's real versus something that causes more emotion, there's not really a balance. Obviously, things that are more dramatic, more out there, it's going to take people more by storm or by shock. That's going to be a lot quicker to get attention rather than someone being like, hey, I went through something and I want to open up about it, because it's harder to get people to listen to stuff like that, because I feel like the reason is, at least that's what I think, is because those are more people, like, people that do those type of, I guess, work in the world, like the whole authenticity, vulnerability, it's just not as relatable. Whereas people can relate to something happening that's funny because they can share it with friends and things like that. So I think it's just one is way more viral or trendy or shareable than the other. And I feel like where we try to bring in being like the same space and same, I guess, energetic connection, we try to bring in more of that and make people hear more of this side of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit more strategic because you understand that the masses are operating from a certain level of awareness. And so
Right.
and I think that the the behavioral side of that dynamic is, it's more about, because as human beings, we want to be continually entertained. And that's why the sporting industry is so big. You know, that's why, you know, social media is so big, and all, and, you know, official or OnlyFans, and just, you know, just the whole space of social media. Like, everybody wants to distract themselves from who they are, because if you can distract yourself from who you are, you know, you can continue to get those little like that feeling and that energy of like want and desire and everything like that. And then it's like, as human beings, we're continually chasing I think, something intellectually, idealistically, and we're continually chasing the emotional feeling of wanting something outside of ourselves versus doing the work to actually go inside and actually fill your own cup and learn how to love yourself, and then learn how to become that icon, learn how to become that energy, learn how to become that hype, and then learn how to become the embodiment of that. And then,
Right.
and then therefore, as a result, you know, then you can actually have relationships that, you know, you think you want, but you're actually not ready for, because you become the embodiment of that. So I think you're right in a lot of ways. I feel that, like, in this world, like, you have to be strategic, because most people are just operating on just that, like, clickbait. They just want that little rush, or they want that little, you know, something to just like get hyped up about, or something to be dramatic, or something to be judgmental towards. But
Right.
they're actually not willing to step back from the idea of who they are and actually start like reflecting and contemplating and slowing down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the short form content. It's people's attention spans now. Whatever's gonna get their information the quickest is what is now popular these days. And like I said, maybe, and that's why, you know, something that's real, raw, and vulnerable isn't as quick to get your attention, because that means you have to sit and listen, and people's attention span just isn't the way it used to be. Because I feel like with time, the more and more short form is being popular, because that's just what keeps people going. They can quickly scroll through while they're at work, while they're at home, while they're cooking. Like, it's just the way that things are now.
Right. Yeah. Because the world has sped up energetically. And part of it is like, we're in this funky space where you have technology and you have access to information and a lot of like sensory input. And then you also, just the universe itself, like, we have more access to information, but yet we don't have the time to actually process that information appropriately. So we've created somewhat toxic patterns in a way. And I think that the future is, there is going to be more discernment as we move forward in this relationship with social media, and people are little by little going to learn how to, you know, break some of those addictive patterns that a lot of us have generated, so that we can learn how to like give ourselves that space of like slowing down and being in our own private life, and then utilizing social media as the tool that it is, but not allowing like a lot of these social media companies and just the machine of the world to really like in a lot of ways manipulate our awareness through their own vices of their money making machine, if you will. You know, that's how it
Right.
feels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah. So on one of your recent reels, you talk about learning how to quiet the mind and silence the inner critic, and then you also were talking about being kind because people are all going through. They're all in the thick of something in their own personal lives that nobody can see, right? And so,
Right.
So I believe, much of life is about learning how to like nurture ourselves and learning how to be our own best friend. Like, what's your take on like your own relationship with self, and what are the drivers like that would want you to like push that kind of like message out there? You know what I mean?
I guess like for me, it's almost, you always hear this and it's corny, but almost everything that I've found out that I've learned is corny is extremely true. So it's, you can't love other people if you don't love yourself. And you hear that and you're like, oh, I forgot the actual way it's said. Is it, you can't love, wait, what is it? Is it like,
You can only love yourself to the depth with which you've learned to love your. You can only love others to the depth
Yes.
with which you've learned to love yourself, if you will.
Correct.
So it's like a reflection. It's like a mirroring, or something.
Exactly. So the thing is, as we get older and wiser and so on, life starts to happen to us, and we learn how to be a little bit more emotionally mature. I think that because obviously life teaches you, either you learn it or life teaches you. So
Right.
I feel like what's important to me in relationship to self is being able to realize that we live in a world where, we live in community, we live in a society, and you have to, the way you treat others is a reflection of how you treat yourself. So
Right.
it's completely tied together. So for me to go out into the world and want to, do the work and be this person who shares the message of vulnerability and being, kind to others, which is, in my opinion, the bare minimum. But I feel like we live in such a fast go, go, go world that sometimes people forget to be human. And I feel like for me to do that, I have to first be that to me. So my driver in having a good relationship with myself is knowing that for me to go out and be the best version of me to the world, to my family, my friends, others, is by first doing it for me. So, the whole romanticizing life in a way, like doing nice things for yourself. Like every week I try to go and get myself flowers, or just to brighten up the house, or cleaning up my space because it makes me feel good that I'm living in a clean environment. Like little things that make me almost like reward myself, and that makes me want to go out and do better for other people because I'm like, doing little things for me. So that's my driver, honestly. And I think that having a good relationship with yourself also makes you feel very secure in yourself. You know that no matter what, no matter what happens, you can take care of you mentally, physically, energetically, and all kinds of ways, because at the end of the day, you have to always be able to take care of you first before you go out and take care of somebody else.
Right. Yeah. No, that's definitely a wisdom in terms of like life, in terms of like building a skill set to where you can like manage your own reality mentally and emotionally in a way that's very loving and nurturing and understanding. And then as you develop those skills in relationship with self, those are the life skills that you bring to the world, right? And you bring out in life, you bring out in business, you bring out in like family, everything. Like, and so when you see people who are, judgmental, or people who bully other people, or, really it's just a reflection of just the chaos that's happening inside of their own brains. Like it's happening inside of their own, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people are just like living more on the surface level, and the way that they treat other people becomes a tell for their own relationship with self,
Right, absolutely. And that's why, like, a lot of times you'll hear people say this, if someone's straight up a rude person, like someone's just not nice, it's almost like you feel bad for them because you're like, clearly that's how you see yourself, because we are mirrors of each other. And like I said, I can't have a bad day if I start my Sunday doing whatever I do that day for me. Like, for example, if I'm gardening, if I'm cooking like a really nice breakfast for myself, I'm not going to go out with a bad attitude because I'm doing nice things for me, which in turn puts me in a good mood to go out and spread that positive like energy to the world. Where someone who's just grumpy all the time, or they just seem to be really rude, it's like, okay, clearly when, like you said, no one's home and you're just by yourself, you're not nice to yourself. You can't be, because if you treat other people like that, it doesn't make sense. I've never met someone who's kind, or someone who is genuinely a good person, who goes home and is hard on themselves. They usually have exactly what they do to other people within themselves to do. They treat themselves with love, kindness, and grace, and it always is correlated 1000%.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, because I always say this, like everything is a reflection of everything. So like when you
Mm-hmm.
see people and you see their work ethic or their lack of work ethic, or you see this or you see that, you see the way that they, you know what I mean? They take care of their physical things or they don't take care of their physical things, their relationships, their own body, you know? So it's like your consciousness, your frequency is like, no matter, it's like I remember I worked with a guy some years back and he was always complaining about the place that we worked at, and he was like, oh, I'm finally moving, I'm moving to Texas, blah blah blah. And I had to just like let him know, I'm like, bro, hey, I just want you to know, like, no matter where you go, you're always taking you with you. So don't worry, man. Like
Yes.
when you get there, you're gonna have the same fucking
You're
gripes.
gonna hate it too.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, have fun, be safe, and you're gonna hate there too. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
true though. It's so true because same thing. Like, for example, I used to work at a corporate sales job that I absolutely hated. And at the time, I wasn't happy with myself because obviously the reason being at the core, I've come to realize was just, it wasn't where I was meant to be.
Right.
So I was frustrated with myself. And in turn, exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, I'm going into work just unhappy because I know that I'm already starting my day grumpy in a bad mood because I'm going to go do something I don't want to be doing. And in turn, it made me just like, I wasn't really grumpy towards people at all, but I just was like very much in my own, like, just here to work, don't want to make friends, don't want to talk to anybody, just want to get my work done so I can go home and do it again tomorrow. So whatever that is, once you feel like you're taking care of you and pouring into you, like I said, if it's not meant for you, if it's not the place, then, go and take care of you. Find what's going to make you happy so that you don't go and bring that energy into the next thing that you do. Because ultimately, yeah, like, of course, if you're not happy with yourself, you're not going to be happy with, the car you're driving or the whatever, the store you go to. You're going to be cranky at like a long line or something. Like, everything triggers you when you're not happy with yourself.
Right, yeah, exactly. And as you learn to like nurture that loving relationship with yourself, and you learn how to like really step into a space where you can be almost in a constant gratitude, then
Yes.
you carry that sense of like patience and understanding and like flexibility with you wherever you go. I mean, obviously there are times where you're going to get frustrated, and I also feel like a part of the personal development and the transformational journey, at least on my journey, like there was times where I had so much pain, so much rage, so much frustration, so much blocked energy that really needed to move. And so I've spent a lot of years single, alone, transforming, healing, and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like people need to understand too that that you should be able to give yourself a space in life to let that energy move through you so that you can grow and you can heal and not judge it. But also at the same token, even as you're trying to evolve and grow and you have certain standards for your own life, you can't go out in the world and project those standards onto other people. You have to understand that, yeah,
Right.
okay, wherever you are at this space in your own growth and your own evolution, it doesn't mean that everybody else is going to be there. So you have to give them that. You know what I mean? There's this like balancing act where you want to be assertive and you want to be discerning. And the more that you learn how to assert your voice, and the more that you learn how to be discerning and seeing things the way they are, then you can navigate like the ugly stuff in life a little bit better because you know how to stand up for yourself. You know how to
Right.
recognize things. You don't victimize yourself. And so it's like
Right.
one thing that I want people to realize is like, so much stuff happens out in the world because people play victim. They're disempowered. They don't speak up for themselves, and then after the situation is over, they're all fucking angry and pissed and judging everybody else because they are the ones that didn't learn how to show up for themselves and let
Right.
their own voice be heard. And so
Well, I
there is,
saw.
yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Sorry. No, you can
No, it's
finish.
good.
Sorry.
No, I finished.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I feel bad. I was gonna say, like, on that note, I
Mm,
heard this saying once, and it's stuck with me forever. Is you can't expect you from other people. So, like you said, sometimes we're all on our own journey, and then we'll get frustrated with someone, maybe because they're not understanding where we're coming from, or like I always say this. I think everybody needs therapy. I've been in therapy for years. I think everybody needs it, even if there's nothing wrong. I think that it's good to have someone help you work through things that sometimes you don't see yourself, and a lot of times I feel like it's helped me grow a lot, especially in the last year. I feel like I've been really consistent with going, and I have my own spiritual practices and things that I do. So having like these things in my life to help me stay grounded and just kind of like stick to the plan of whatever it is I set out to do that's helped me a lot. But also sometimes I'll deal with someone who's extremely emotionally immature, especially around my age. I feel like a lot of people just they don't want to put in the work yet. They want to wait until whatever in their life this season is over to work on themselves. And I'll get frustrated because I don't understand why that they deal with an issue a certain way, or why there's still drama at this age, or like just things that I'm like, I'm past that season in my life. And I will get frustrated, but then I realize not everyone decided that they want to have a yoga practice, that they want to have a church or some kind of religion in their life. They don't want therapy. So I can't be frustrated with someone who doesn't even know the thing that they're missing in their life yet, you know?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and part of that too is like even at your young age, like you haven't even moved into your Saturn return, which is like at 28 or so. And
Next year.
yeah, so it's really cool, but yeah, you already come in with a lot of self-awareness as a spiritual being, and then to top that off, you're also taking actions in all of these different ways to kind of nurture that growth. So you're already ahead of the game, you know, ahead of like most people. And so you're absolutely right. Like we have to like learn to be able to like not project our standards onto other people, but at the same time not coddle them either. So it's kind of like this weird balancing act where you want to be like a good friend, you want to be a good person, you want to like you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but you want to call things out like the way they are as well.
Here's what I learned from that, actually. Now that you touched on it, that's interesting, because I learned that by not coddling it is just simply removing yourself. Like sometimes saying nothing is the right answer, because like I said, for me, it's mostly with friends. It's friends, I guess colleagues, not friends. Colleagues that I've had that have come into my life, whether it's through work or other friends or things like that. And maybe we're super compatible in the beginning, but then I'll see things happen and I'll see how they react to it. And to me, it's less about being like, you know, hard on them. Like, oh, clearly you didn't heal past this. So that's why you're treating me like this, or someone else like this. It's one thing to say it because they're not gonna process that, because again, they haven't healed through something yet.
Yeah.
Or just saying like, you know what, right now this friendship doesn't serve me and where I'm at in my life, and
Yeah.
I'll be here from a distance and love you from a distance if you need me, but I just don't want to associate with that right now. So I think that's where I learned, like, it's either being understanding can mean either trying to help, but there's people who don't want to be helped. So it's like there's no point in forcing the barrier and just removing yourself for the time being, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel the same way. Like I'm the kind of person when I make friends with people, like I'm a friend for life. Like I'll never turn my back on them, no matter what happens, no matter circumstances changes. I'm like, I'm always going to be that same motherfucker. I'm always going to love people. I'm always going to come from my heart. But the thing about life is that you have to be able to see those patterns. And as you see those patterns, or you identify those patterns in people's behaviors, you're able to recognize energetically if there isn't an alignment. And then if there isn't an alignment, the only thing that you can do is, you know, you can plant seeds for that growth, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to water them. You know what I mean? Like you can plant
1000%.
seeds, but that doesn't mean they're going to understand it at wherever they're at right now, you know?
Or they want to. Some people just simply don't want to. Like you can, like I have such a clear example of this. I have a friend that came into my life and left recently, and she just has some things to work past and heal from. So I don't want to get into detail just in case she ever sees this. But point is, you know, she was going through a lot of stuff and she came into my life, and I have this thing, and I think it's the hyper empathetic thing in us, where I want to help people when I see they need help. I'm always like, let me, you know, bring them into yoga. Let me introduce them to my other friends who are like extremely like good for my soul. So I know they're going to be good for them. And I try to bring her in as much as possible, but unfortunately there were things she just didn't heal from yet, that it was almost like we're keeping her from like growing into the next season of, you know, who she's trying to become, essentially. And I realized no matter how much I tried to help, no matter how much I gave of me, like literally taking away from my work hours to be around, to listen to all the things that she went through and everything, no matter what, some people just do not want to be helped, and there's so much you can do. So it was a big learning lesson for me, actually, because I realized that I'm at the age right now where I need to be on my stuff, working and pouring into what I think pours back into me at this point. And it's just not fair to the woman that I'm trying to become to be pulled back by someone who's not trying to move where they're at right now. You know?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's my belief in reincarnation is specifically tied to the fact that I think the universe and God is super smart, because human beings are so resistant to change and growth and vulnerability, and we're so fucking hard-headed. Like, you need reincarnation, because fucking most people are just knuckleheads, and they're not ready to like step in. I mean, I say it in a nice way, like, I'm a Leo. I can be a little bit strong or judgmental sometimes, but I'm also extremely compassionate. And I think that, a lot of people just are really just, they're happy with the status quo. They're happy with living on the surface. They're happy with hiding from themselves. They're not ready to like step into to the ocean of love that's available inside of all of us. But, it's definitely there and it's available. But like you said, we're all in a different season, and we have to, respect that, in a lot of ways. The way I see self-awareness is like, I don't think the universe has a hierarchy, meaning like, as you become more self-aware and more evolved, like you're not better than anybody else. Like Jesus is not, or Buddha, or, even for myself, I've like put on the mind of Christ in this life. I've literally walked through like Christ consciousness. Like, I was in an altered state of consciousness for years. It was so profound, like what I committed to. But my point is, no matter how much you evolve your self-awareness, we're all one in this universe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there is no hierarchy of value. We're all inherently valuable, whether it's the animals, whether it's the earth, whether it's the human beings who embody souls. Like, we are all equally valuable. But as we develop our self-awareness, we're able to tune into different frequency ranges. It's almost like a TV. When you're at level, channel fucking 20, sometimes you got to turn that dial back to number 4 so you can relate to people on a human level, on a humanitarian level, and love them and nurture them and let them be seen and felt and everything. But then as soon as you walk away from that situation, like you go back to your house, boom, you're back on like 25. Like, I mean, that, and that's the cool thing about like being committed to love, being committed to truth, being committed to evolving ourselves spiritually, is that we get access to more stuff. Like, we get more adaptable to be able to like tune into where people are and learn how to like show up at their space, because that's what compassion and love is about. I believe in a lot of ways is the ability to recognize and be with what is,
Right. I agree. I think that at the end of the day, like you said, everything serves a purpose. Everything is here for a reason. And I think that it's all about honoring that. And that's why also I think that being kind, being compassionate is so important, because for lack of better words, like nobody's better than anybody in this world, in my opinion.
Right.
I think that your value comes from how you treat people, because it means that you're bringing something that is really important, which is love, compassion, and genuine kindness back into a space that I think that sometimes we can lose that as a society.
Yeah, we lose it as a society because the machine wants to sell us whatever is best for them. The government wants to disempower the masses so they can keep the business of government, the business of war, so that they can get their 40% from our paychecks or whatever. And the media, wants to sell the drama so that they can get more clicks, so they can get more advertising. The social media stuff wants, again, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, we are, and the politicians, we are at the mercy of the collective consciousness. And I've said this a lot on my podcast, which is, if you look at the shit show in American politics and you see that those people, do they represent me? Absolutely not. But do they represent the masses? In a lot of ways, they do represent the masses. And unless the masses are going to fucking decide to grow up and be honest with themselves and make a commitment to love and put our feet down, and start this like inner revolution. Like, I don't believe that the transformation of like politics and social structures have to happen in this radical way. We don't need civil war. We don't need to go out and kill each other. We need to have like a revolution inside of us. Like, if you're having your own revolution, I'm having my own revolution, and then we go out the world and we embody that authenticity, then we're planting seeds for that revolution in other people through our expression,
Right. Absolutely. I think that that's where I think that if, for example, before I got in tune with my spirituality, I don't know what you think, so I'm curious to hear what you think, but
Sure.
I believe spirituality and religion are completely different and they're separate, but they do connect in some ways. Personally, I have my religion, but I also am spiritual.
Mm,
Whereas I do believe God and the universe, I do believe they are also one.
right.
So, with that being said, I feel like it took me a long time to connect those things. I felt like I was always very much like one way is the highway, and what I believe in is what I believe in.
Mm,
But the more that life taught me a lot of lessons, and the more that I opened my mind up to just being around people who I wasn't used to being around, and that sounds weird, but just people that I didn't normally have within like my community, like maybe people in different religions and races and things and that just really opened my mind up to everything else that exists in this very, very large world we live in. The more I realized, oh shit, I've only known life one way. There's so many other ways people are living their lives, and they seem really happy too with all these different ways of living. So I think something has to happen where people just realize that there's so much more out there that they're not allowing themselves to be open to. And there's a saying in Portuguese which means like thing you can only come to certain awakenings pelo amor or pela dor, which means for love or through pain. So either you want to, which some people like us want to because we're like, oh, there's all these things out there, or something has to happen for people to humble themselves and be able to say, okay, maybe I don't have it all figured out. And that's where it sucks because something shouldn't need to happen to you for
mm,
you to want to be a better person. It should be like, oh, okay, like you look really happy moving with love, or me moving in, I don't know, I guess resentment and anger isn't looking too bright for me. Like I'm constantly unhappy, so why not do something about that? You know?
right. Yeah. No, I think the universe utilizes the duality and the paradox in a lot of ways, in a sense that, love and pain or love and fear, like, they are contrasts that are necessary for human growth and evolution. And again, if we had all love, then we wouldn't be able to have such a deep relationship with grace and gratitude, because
True.
because of that pain and that fear and that insecurity and that loss, it makes love more juicy. It makes family more juicy. It makes relationships more juicy, right? It makes, you know what I mean? Like losing for 10 years and then finally getting that win, like it makes it that much better. So yeah, my feeling is that, love is essentially this feminine energy, and this feminine energy is God. And if you think about the way that we experience reality in our dream state, where it's like time doesn't exist, and as soon as you think something in your dream, what happens? Like you create it, right? Like boom, it's like right there. I feel like that is kind of our home. Like the non-physical is where we came from. And so in this non-physical place, this mother, this Holy Spirit, this divine mother, like this feminine, it wanted to know itself in all ways possible. So it literally started slowing down its energy and giving birth to like physical matter, which could be represented by the masculine energy, the outward push,
Right.
versus the mother energy of spirituality, the inward, right? The feminine inward and the masculine pushing outward.
Right.
And so in that way, it wanting to know itself in all ways possible, it allows for all things to exist in that realm of possibility. And so with that said, that masculine energy, that intellectual energy in the world, human beings have overdeveloped their masculine energy. So they attach to their ego, they attach to their thoughts, they attach to their belief systems because it's safe, because the emotion, the feminine, the inner towards the emotions being the pathway to your spiritual self is scary because it's abstract, it's unknown, it can't be quantified, it can't be verified in science and, and all that kind of stuff. So in a lot of ways, like you said, recognizing that all religions on earth have inherent truths, and they all have a purpose towards providing intellectual frameworks so that folks can learn how to step into, to refine, to develop their virtue, and so they could be better people. For me as a child, I was this like hyper, like my sister would always say, like I was this quiet little boy and I wouldn't talk, and she had to protect me, right? And but when I spoke, I just spoke in these like big words, and it didn't make any sense because I grew up with a mom who had manic depression, and ever since I was in her belly, and my sister, and we grew up rough and no money, and really, I mean, my mom tried hard as a nurse, but like, where did those words come from? Where did that wisdom come from? Well, the reality is that I had already brought in the wisdom of love and truth from other lifetimes, from other star systems, from, like, I came in here already with a lot of understanding for love. And so, like, that would be my take, which is, as I started living in the world, I recognized that there were these inherent distortions in religion. There were this dogma, and there was this judgmental God, and there was this judgmental God gave birth to this devil that we were susceptible to. And I always knew that, because I loved people so unconditionally ever since I was a little boy, like the way that I loved people, I knew that was God. And so I always saw through religion and for the distortions, and I had no interest in religion. And in fact, I wouldn't use words like the Holy Spirit or God or anything like that, because I didn't subscribe to those limiting beliefs, those limiting structures and self-limiting belief systems. But as I was guided towards my own growth, I saw like this UFO, this large mothership, when I was 18 years old. And I literally had like my first awakening, and I realized I was this soul. And Michael was this 18-year-old boy, and he was so sensitive and he was so scared. And my job as the soul was to learn to love and nurture Michael. And so I did whatever my identity basically crumbled away after I saw this mothership. And the next morning I was like, eating cereal, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to read the paper? You'd say, like, I'm a little older than you, but like, it was just a different world. It was before the internet. And so I went on this path to learning how to love and nurture Michael. And I started creating like a brand new identity. And shortly after that, you know, asking how I could find inner peace, I was told to give my life to God. And so I guess my point is, like, it wasn't until I had my own profound, like, spiritual awakening, like on a biblical level, that I actually became full circle, in a sense that I understood the inherent nature of the Holy Spirit. And I'd spent so much time learning how to develop a relationship with grace. And so at this stage in my own evolution where I am now, like, I use the word God, I use the word Holy Spirit, and because there's no more inherent bias. I work through my darkness, I work through my judgment, I work through my disconnect, and I've developed a very integral relationship with the energy of life in the universe inside of my body. I've learned how to step into my own feminine energy so that I don't have to be dependent on the woman to feel for me. Like, I've learned how to feel for myself, which in a lot of ways, that's what's going on in this planet. Women are learning how to refine their intellect, right? And they already, a lot of them are naturally feelers, where men is like, we're in our heads, we want to control things, we're insecure, and we're learning how to step into our feminine energy. And so I think the future of humanity and evolution is learning how to embody both our feminine and our masculine energy. And the more that we learn how to do that, the more harmonious our lives become, then the more life skills we bring to the world. And then full circle, like you said, when you're operating from your heart space full time, you recognize that life is temporary. Like, Barbara, you're a temporary, this is just the identity for this life. You're something deeper inside of that. So you don't get so caught up in the drama of who the world thinks you are. You just live in that love space, and you don't get caught up in like, in religion or money or status or looks or just all of the surface bullshit. You just stay rooted in love, and that is the deepest abiding truth, irregardless. And human beings need to understand, like, country doesn't mean shit, religion doesn't mean shit, skin color doesn't mean shit. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is who is that connection inside of us, because that's going to last forever. That's eternal.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me get some water after that one. So I made a little note from our pre-call, and it was about, you know, being these sensitive, these creative, these intuitive people that we are, right? And so because we're able to pick up on these subtle energies, like sometimes we'll get in our heads and we'll create scenarios that aren't necessarily real. Um, so like, what's your feeling on that? Because I feel like when you're tuned into all of these different sensitivities and these different things, like sometimes we can get ourselves upset because like we create scenarios that aren't necessarily real. Have you experienced that too sometimes, where you can kind of get in your head, and because there's so much creativity and so much feelings, because like the subtle world is like really abstract, and trying to like merge what you feel with what's actual reality, sometimes we can kind of get lost in our own storyline, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I mean, all the time, daily, all the time, I create this is a whole other one that we will probably get into for a while, but I've been dealing with this one every day for the past 2 weeks, which is creating scenarios that haven't happened, but I already feel sad about them. For example, yesterday was my dog's birthday. My firstborn, my one and only son, Zeus, he's my big baby, my Rottweiler. He is like, me and this dog go together like peanut butter and jelly, like night to day, like this. So I looked at him and he's perfectly healthy. He's 7 years old now. Nothing wrong. He's just getting older. And I was like, what is going to happen when this dog dies? And I grabbed onto him. I started crying and like so much that like it was an ongoing thing. I emailed my therapist. I'm like, I need to see you. Something's wrong. And she's like, what's wrong? I was like, we'll talk about it. Hopefully by the time we talk, I'm going to get over it. But it's still bugging me. And then the reason it bugs me is because that's one thing. Then it leads to my family, which I'm super attached to. Then friends, people around me. And I start getting sad when it's like my family's like healthy, they're normal, nothing's wrong, nothing's happened, but I like put myself in the shoes of the person I'll be when I experience the thing that hasn't happened yet. And this is the new one. This is the new thing I've been dealing with recently, but needless to say, do I go through the scenarios that I like get upset or sad or emotional over something that hasn't happened yet? Daily. This is just the most recent one. And I've been learning how to cope with it, but like there's ways to like move past those thoughts, but I can never wrap my mind around like why I do that to myself. Why am I purposely self-sabotaging, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. But I also think, from my experience, sometimes when you're really tapped in, the whole idea is just to feel whatever needs to come through, because I think a part of personal growth and transformation is giving space for the feelings that are coming through, and like having this loving allowance for them to be perfect in their own place and time. And this is just my take. I'm not trying to be your therapist or anything, but
no, of course. So I'm opening about it.
Yeah, no, but I think it's like if we learn how to like give loving allowance to ourselves no matter what is going through, yes. And then we also learn how to be the observer more and more and more. And so I think as we get good at allowing the energy to move through us, if it's emotional, if it's anger, if it's fear, whatever, we just get really good at allowing it to be. And then little by little, it becomes the embodiment of us. And then it becomes just a higher level of compassion. It's just, right. And then also, we also are able to observe more too. Like we can just be like, that observance is like being with that and not judging it. And so they almost go like hand in hand. So now you have more emotional space and you don't judge it. So it's like kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm trying, like, without, like I said, not just my therapist. Like I pray about this. I talk to other people about it in hopes that like with you, in hopes that someone can be like, maybe this is what it is. And I've gotten a lot of feedback on different opinions and emotions that people go through as well. And ultimately what I've learned from getting each person's perspective on it is, one, accepting that like we are not like the savior, we are not Christ. So it's not our job to like save all these people that like in my case I'm getting sad about, dog included, whatever. So it's more so like you can have your feelings, let them pass by you, but also it's not your job to save everyone. So you can't have all these emotions sit with you for like as long as sometimes it will. It's more like you said, feel it, let yourself go through it. And then I think you did come out of it a lot stronger. I would like to believe that this is making me a very strong person when it comes to dealing with grief. but I won't know until I deal with it because these are scenarios I'm making up in my head, I've dealt with grief, but I mean in these scenarios. So I think that what I learned and what I took away from it and keep taking away from it is allowing myself to feel these things. That way, if something does happen, like I better be ready for it, considering I'm putting myself through it now, but hopefully it'll make me a really strong person. And I think that when you are a strong person with sensitive times like that, it's your job to then help others deal with it because you've been able to deal with it yourself, you know?
Right. Yeah. You're able to create a framework that's more healthy and that's more balanced. And I think you're exactly right. And that was actually something that came up for me earlier when you were talking, which is about, like, I've always been a perpetual like fixer or like people pleaser. And it wasn't until like I left my marriage and I just started going through this profound awakening. And I just was experiencing so much loss, and I had a spiritual connection to somebody that just didn't work out, and then my mom died, and so it felt like the
I'm
world
sorry.
was. Thank you. It felt like the world had taken away like all of the feminine energy in my life that I had attached to, right? So it like forced me, and it was part of what I was. In a lot of ways, if people understand that their higher self is actually setting them up for success. Like, for instance, your higher self chose certain circumstances in this life so that you could fulfill your soul purpose in this life. So that if we understand, like, externally, like, there's nothing like happening like to us, like it's happening for us, and it's part of our higher self has created dynamics and scenarios to help prepare us for whatever's next.
Right.
So I think if people can see that life is that life doesn't happen to them, but that life happens because of them, then we can start nurturing like this space that's much more empowered, that's much more like loving and nurturing, and is like, and to your point, like, everything's temporary. These bodies are temporary. I got gray hairs coming out. I got ring. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how much you want to be like, what's the word when somebody's really vain? Like, I'm a Leo. I'm like super vain, right?
Like vain, like you care about like your aesthetics, I guess.
Yeah, very much. I'm very aesthetically focused. But my point is, like, everything in this life is temporary. Relationships are temporary.
1000%.
Bodies are temporary. Lifestyle is temporary.
That's why too, like, I feel like a lot of times, especially as women, we put a lot of stress on how we look. But at the end of the day, if you go to the gym 5 times a day, that doesn't make sense to do that, because at the end of the day, you're not going to see results any quicker. But it's almost like people feel the need to, like, I gotta look good because society says so, and the more I do now, the more I'll feel good. But it's like, at the end of the day, it goes back to like what we said earlier, loving yourself as you are. It's like, you can care about how you look, but at the same time, don't kill yourself over, financially putting yourself in a bad place to afford something, or overexhausting your body, or doing all these things just to feel good about yourself. You should feel good about yourself and do those things because you love yourself to do them for you, like taking care of your health, doing things that make you feel good. I think that also goes back to what we were saying earlier, always moving in a place of love, even with yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And what is your perspective on mental health and the social media space? And do you think that social media has is having an effect on people's mental health?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, actually. Well, I try to, mostly through my platform. It's just the only thing that sucks is, like I said earlier, I feel like people don't want to listen unless it's something quick and gets their attention. But I could talk about this for a long, 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 long time, which is also, I started my own like YouTube for just having these kind of talks, because I was like, somebody needs to hear me on this. And it does. I feel like there are people who definitely resonate with it and relate to it, because yes, absolutely, I think social media has ruined a lot of people's mental health because of the comparison game of us, going on and seeing that so and so has a new car or a new house, and maybe it's someone that doesn't work as hard as maybe you think you do, or all these speculations and assumptions of a reality that we don't even know. And nothing specific comes to mind when I say that. I guess just thinking generically of examples, but comparing yourself and your lifestyle, your job, your looks, that's something that I think has made people really, really down bad, honestly. And I think that what's helped, I've obviously done it too. I think we're all guilty of this.
Sure.
And one thing that helped me a lot when I first started becoming more active on social media and seeing so much of what other people may have that I don't, or, I wasn't born a Kardashian, unfortunately, but like those little things that you're like, some people really are born into better circumstances, or some people have earned better circumstances. And it is what it is. There's a lot of other things that we don't know, but that's the point. There's so much we don't know. We just see what we see. So the saying, you only know what you know. And one saying that I heard a while back that really stuck with me is, if you have someone and you're like, I had what they have, whatever that they is, materialistic, relationships, whatever. But would you also want the things that they don't want, that they have? For example, the things that they show us, but we don't see their problems. We don't see what goes on behind, the screen. So if you could switch places with someone, you would have to switch places with every single part of their lives. And just like we do, that imaginary person probably has issues of their own, things that they don't probably want to deal with either. So we can't compare ourselves in a place that we only know probably 20% of what we see online. So I think that it has ruined our mental health in some sense, the society as a whole. But at the same time, I think that we have to also move past that and realize that most of everything we see is just something that's been orchestrated to show the audience. A lot of times people aren't even who they really say they are online. Sometimes they just have this persona, this e-persona, this online version of them,
Sure, absolutely. And that's why I think at the end of the day, like money and fame and whatever, it's never going to bring fulfillment. And so who you are as an individual in the relationship that you've developed with yourself is what will ultimately bring you fulfillment. And as you move towards like being as authentic as possible, and you move towards whatever it is that drives you, like you said, moving from what you were doing before to becoming a full-time creator over the last year or two, you're putting yourself in a position where you're connected to the subtle energies, to the feng shui, if you will, in your life, and you're able to like start curating a lifestyle that is aligned with your spirit, that makes you happy, so that you don't have to bring whatever your personal frustrations are into environment. So I think that that's absolutely great, and like people need to understand like the end goal is not like money and fame. The end goal is connection and fulfillment.
Correct. I think that that's why a lot of people, even in really, I guess, financially well off or famous spots, ultimately end up taking their lives, because that void, whatever they're trying to fill, that's not going to fill it for them. And it's really unfortunate, because that's where like I have a really big soft spot for people who do get like unfortunately take their own lives, because it's like, when you're in alignment spiritually with yourself, what they're missing. And it's like, if they couldn't find it themselves, if only they had someone around them to help them connect to themselves deeper, to be able to fill whatever they were lacking or trying to fill in their lives, But at the end of the day, I think that want to fill that void, like I said, comes from wanting to, or something has to happen to you for you to want to go out and seek it, like we said earlier.
Yeah, that's true. And that was a point that I was wanting to make earlier, which was about like being a people pleaser, but also like wanting to put the world on your shoulders. And I think that I'm like finding that now, like I've been single for so long, and I'm like starting to feel like I'm in a space where, I'll start dating here soon. But I also feel like I have to be very careful, because I don't want to continue that trend, even though I've been single like a freaking decade and I was married, 12 years. Like I don't want to fix people anymore. Like, so I have to be very, very careful to not just get into some kind of a commitment because I don't want to be a fixer anymore. You know what I mean? So, and it's hard because I love people just so profoundly, and I love creating friendships and stuff like that. But I don't know. It just feels like an interesting space. The more that you know yourself, the more that you love yourself, to find that balance between like loving and nurturing people, but knowing how to like not, you know what I mean? Knowing how to like not be Atlas and like carry that like for people anymore. Like, how do you break that people pleasing? Well, I've broken the people pleasing pattern, but I feel like I want to be a fixer, and I don't want to be a fixer. You know what I mean?
I know, I have that gene in me as well. I think it's just about like, understanding that the universe will give you the same lesson over and over again until you learn it, because that's just the way that it is. And I've experienced that so many times in my life. And I feel like the fixing people thing is also a lesson that you go through, which I have. But for me, it's always been in friendships. Always with friendships. I've always had like been the one to be like, no, but like I'll give her a chance or I'll give him a chance, whatever it is. Like they're not like whatever. Like they just need the right person in their lives to help them. And I'm like, I'm gonna be the right person. But it's like I said, we're not the savior. We're not everybody's savior. Definitely not. So I
Yeah.
think until we learn that that's not our job, that comes from them, the universe is going to keep putting things in our way to make us learn it from experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, even that whole complex around the savior thing, I think that in a lot of ways, religion has created a God in the image of man's limited and judgmental ego. And so
Right.
even the story of Christ as a savior was a reflection of man's ego. And so if
Right.
anything, Christ is just saying, hey, the kingdom of God and love is within you. And you know, you have the opportunity to love and nurture and heal and realize that in yourself. And at the end of the day, you know, we're not here to fix or save anybody. We're just
No.
we're just here to become the embodiment of love as best as we possibly can, you know?
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what are some of your goals in terms of being in the social media space? Like what are some of the things that you're trying to do in your life and your career? I'm just curious to hear about that.
Yeah, as far as my goals, I am hoping to be able to have a couple of, I guess, brand deals or alignments that will be like almost like a full time, just dedicated to one brand. So instead of working with several companies and brands online to showcase their work or their clothing, whatever that is. So
Mm.
my goal for 2025 is actually to have a specific brand that I will be working with, just aligning completely everything to them and just continue to grow in the space. And hopefully once I feel like I have a strong enough platform, or maybe even if my YouTube takes off with me talking more, like I said, bring a lot of this into that, because I feel like it's something that I'm really passionate about, just mental health and also all of the things I've learned spiritually, energetically, that's kind of helped me cope with me, things that like I experience. I would love to have a place where I can share that as well. And hopefully whatever that helped me helps other people as well. So just continuing to grow and just continuing to have, like I said, whatever I'm working towards, hopefully reaching that goal next year.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, I think you have a lot going on for you. I think aesthetically and creatively and being intelligent and kind. I think that, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
thank you.
There's no limits in terms of your like ability to, you know, create the life you want and have a really cool impact. So,
Yeah, it's the goal.
yeah. So yeah, I moved to LA earlier this year, and things just didn't seem to work out. So I came back to Stockton, California, and got my old job back, and I start tomorrow, which I'm really happy about. And but it was beautiful because I had the first time in my life I had 6 months to become like a full-time like creative designer, like, you know, fashion designer, which is my long-term goal. So I've created a lot of you know, unique art and things like that I'm looking forward to sharing over the coming years.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at your chart this morning. I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to be my first design I'm going to be dropping is the Aquarius design, and then I think next is going to be either Taurus or Scorpio. So I was thinking about you with the Taurus sign. So when I get my Taurus
Yes.
hat and T-shirt designed, I'll send that over to you. So
That'd be awesome. I love that. That's really cool.
cool. So this has been a really great conversation. I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy it. I mean, I think we've covered a lot of space in a really short period of time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we jump out?
No, I think I'm all set. I feel like I poured my little heart out. So hopefully everyone enjoys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, until next time, my friends, stay thirsty for life. I love you. Bye.